Good afternoon. We have a quorum. There is a meeting conducting in another room at the moment. Now the time has come and we have a quorum. Let's get started. Starting from today, we'll have a series of special FC meetings. It will last for 5 days to examine the estimates of expenditures 2013-14 so as to ensure that the administration will get the provisions it needs for the year 2013-14. The special FC meetings will be conducted in 20 sessions. At the beginning of each session, the head of the relevant bureau will give a brief introduction first, and then we'll proceed to the question session. Members of the FC, please take the seat as usual, and we'll take a head count at the first session in the morning and afternoon. And quorum means that the chairman plus 8 other members. The members have submitted 5,471 written questions. The administration undertook that the written questions would be dealt with first. That is the 3,300 written questions. And for the rest, they will be submitting replies before the 24th of April. That is the third reading of the budget bill. Depending on the number of members who wish to speak, I'll decide the time for each question and answer. And please press the request to speak button if you wish to speak. I'll decide on the time after I know the number of members who wish to speak. I'd like to remind members that questions must be directly related to the estimates of expenditure. If members would like to follow up on the written replies submitted, please quote the reply serial number in the top right-hand corner of the page. For example, CSB 001. To facilitate our meeting, the Secretariat has designed a new computer interface for us. Members can quickly look for the written reply from the new interface, and the written reply will also be projected on the monitor in the conference room. The standard form for supplementary questions have already been placed in front of you. Please also submit the form should you need to the Secretariat, and the administration should also submit the replies before the 24th of April. And may I invite the Secretary for Civil Service to give us a speech first. Good afternoon, Chairman and honorable members. Of items relating to civil service expenses in the 2013-14 draft estimates of expenditure, I would like to highlight 2 items. First, civil service establishment. The civil service has supported the 4th-term government in implementing many new policies and initiatives in a professional and effective manner. We'll continue to work with bureaus and departments to enhance efficiency through internal redeployment, streamlining, and re-engineering. We'll also render support to civil service by strengthening the establishment to cope with extra workload. We'll support creation of new civil service posts where operational need is fully justified and when work involved cannot be undertaken by redeployment of existing staff. There has been a slight increase of about 1% in the civil service establishment each year since 2006-07. The 2013-14 draft estimates of expenditure project a 1% increase or extra 1,708 posts in the civil service establishment. Subject to approval of the draft estimates, the civil service establishment is expected to stand at 171,422 posts at the end of March next year. Second, financial provisions. In the draft estimates of expenditure, there are some financial provisions under various heads of expenditure which are directly related to policy area of central management of service. The first one is head 37 to provide medical and dental treatment for civil servants. We propose a financial provision of $1.0473 billion to provide medical and dental services for serving civil servants and pensioners and their eligible dependents at family clinics and dental clinics, as well as the reimbursement of medical fees and hospital charges. For the former, allocation of $627.3 million proposed, meaning an increase of $45.3 million or 7.8%. Additional provision is mainly for setting up additional dental surgeries, enhancing services at Kowloon Families Clinic, and procuring extra equipment. For the reimbursement, an allocation of $420 million proposed, meaning an increase of $70 million over the 2012-13 revised estimates. This is to meet an anticipated increase in applications for reimbursements. Head 20 is the next one, for public and judicial service pension benefits, an amount of $24,568.7 million proposed, and this represents an increase of $3,444.5 million or 16.3% over 2012-13 revised estimate. The increase due to an estimated increase in the number of new retirees in 2013-14 and the full-year effect of pension payments to those retiring in 2012-13. Chairman, as the backbone of civil servant, the civil service assists the administration in formulating, explaining, and implementing policies. Contributes to stability and continuity of government operation. The Bureau will continue to strive to maintain a professional and efficient civil service to deliver service to the public. Chairman, that's all I have to say in my speech. I'm happy to answer questions. Now, we have to end the session at 4:30. We have the president for time, and 6 members are waiting to speak. If anyone else would like to speak, please press the button. 8 members have already pressed the button, waiting to speak. And we're now 5 minutes into the 40 minutes we have to be more strict with the time. We now have 10 members waiting to speak. Tan Ka Piu, Lau Wai Heng, Chan Wai Chun, Tony She, Tam Yu Chung, Leung Kwok Hong, etc. We have 11 present. Mr. Tan Ka Piu, the first one. Thank you, Chairman. Now, about Head 37, the medical and dental treatment for civil servants, there is an increase of financial provision. In fact, we are quite concerned, especially when, as we are from the labor sector. How come for the reimbursement system, you cannot cover the outpatient Chinese medicine services? Now, let's say for the Chinese medicine services provided in 15 to 16 districts by the HA, how much more do you have to spend in terms of reimbursement? Because if you do that, you are offering more choices to people who are consulting Western medicine medical doctors. Now, we have representatives from the Department of Health here. Your department is the monitor of traditional Chinese medical practitioners. You also have direct liaison with them. Some sectors feel that Chinese medicine is not exactly proper. Department of Health, will you set up particular clinics providing Chinese medicine medical services to the civil servants? Thank you for the question. Let me give you a brief introduction before I defer to Dr. Lai to supplement the details. Members may know that traditional Chinese medical services is not provided under HA. At a regular basis, and so we do not have a plan for the way related to the traditional Chinese medical practitioners. We closely monitor the development of the trade before we consider whether it should be incorporated into the reimbursement scheme. When I understand that the DH is also closely monitoring the development of this trade. Dr. Lai? Yes, Dr. Lai. For Chinese medical services, HA is not the only entity providing it. For the DH, we are the monitor. We are not the service provider. At present, in family clinics and dental clinics, services are provided by the DH there as required by the Civil Service Bureau. Now, let's say Dr. Ko in the next room says that the HA will not directly employ traditional Chinese medical practitioners, but will assist universities and relevant organizations to provide such services in the community. If DH continues the way it does it mean that we cannot enhance the services provided by Chinese practitioners, Chinese medical medicine practitioners? Chairman, I'd like to clarify that for DH, in terms of development of Chinese medical services, they are the monitor. So even if we develop such services, DH will not be the department responsible for that. As to whether the HA will provide regular Chinese medical services, or will the HA actually provide such services, Mr. Tang, if you propose to, you do not propose to change the status quo, will you have any plans to change it in the future? Mr. Wang Kwok-heng. The Secretary said no to Mr. Tang's question. That is, he will not provide Chinese medicine services to civil servants at an affordable price. I strongly disagree with your practice. I think you try to outwit what's said in the policy address.
In the policy address, I may refer to paragraph 169, Hong Kong will develop Chinese medicine. But then concerning reimbursing civil servants for the expenses they incur when they consult Chinese medicine practitioners, the CSB and the relevant departments are still adopting an obsolete mindset. And so I don't need a reply from you. I want to say that I am extremely disappointed with your attitude and your reply. And I would like to ask a question about FSTB 079, question number 0241, concerning stepping up the recruitment of civil servants and reducing number of NCSC staff. Can I ask the Secretary whether you've got the latest figure for my reference? And that is, in the coming financial year, how many newly created posts will there be in the civil service? And how many posts will be filled by civil servants and will no longer be filled by NCSC staff members, because the former secretary gave us figures, 4,004, 5,080, and I can remember that you, the secretary, did mention the figure 400 odd. So do you have the latest figure, and what are your future plans? Secretary. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Wong. Now I want to supplement concerning Chinese medicine. Now we can take action only when the development of Chinese medicine in the public sector is mature. So we have to wait for that first, and then we will decide whether we will include such a service with regard to reimbursement of medical expenses for civil servants. But then we have to wait till Chinese medicine has developed in the public sector. And then concerning NCSC staff, Chairman, in 2006 we had over 4,000 posts, which we thought would be converted to civil service posts. And most of them, 3,000 to 4,000 of them, have already been turned or converted into civil service posts. And after 2006, we felt that 1,400 posts would one day become civil service posts. And out of the 1,400, 1,200 have become civil service posts. And with regard to the latest figures, I want to say that in the coming financial year, we will have 458 posts, which will be converted to civil service posts. Yes, Chairman, I want to follow up on the second question. 458 for the coming financial year. So, do you have any plans to convert posts into civil service posts every year? And can you give me the numbers for the coming years? Yes, Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Now we'll continue to work in this direction. In fact, we do have a regular dialogue with departments hiring NCSC staff, asking them which posts can be converted back to civil service posts. And so we will be giving members an update in the public service panel. In fact, this exercise has not come to an end, and there will be a review before the end of the year, and then we'll report to the panel which posts, apart from the 4,000 to 5,000 I have mentioned, can be converted back to civil service posts. Chairman, I think the Secretary has only given approximate figures. Can I have more accurate figures from the Secretary after the meeting? Now, I think time's up. If you want supplementary information, please fill in the forms before you. Now, we have 12 or 13 more members who are waiting to ask questions, and this session must end at or by 4:30. So each member will only get 3 minutes. And if you ask a question and can't get a satisfactory reply from the Secretary, please fill in the form before you, and please be concise so that the Secretary will have some time to reply. Ms. Emily Lau, and I think concerning time management, I think if we don't have sufficient time, you should give us more time to ask questions. I want to follow up on CSB 001 asked by Mr. Fernando Zhang on the hiring of persons with disabilities in the government. Now, you haven't given us the number, nor have you given us the breakdown concerning the rank or the ranking, and you've only given us the figure 2%, and I think this percentage has not been increased over the years. I think you need to set a good example for the community. You need to convince the community that you are sincere in hiring more persons with disabilities. And some are of the view that some departments do not hire PWDs. And I would like to know why the percentage has remained at 2%. Is there a possibility for increasing this percentage? Yes, Chairman, thank you. First of all, concerning 2%, this is not an objective or target as such. Basically, we don't have a quota for the employment of PWDs. In fact, the ILO has admitted that setting a quota may not necessarily help the employment of PWDs. So when PWDs sit for civil service recruitment exams, we will give them equal opportunities. And if they need assistance in the exam process, we'll try to give them the necessary assistance, and we will, of course, give them a chance to sit for the written exam and also the interview. And in some cases, if PWDs can satisfy our requirements, we'll give them priority in employment. And there are some departments which in our view can do more with regard to the employment of PWDs, and we will be liaising with these departments. And so will you ask certain departments to employ more PWDs? Will you increase the percentage? At the moment it's 2%. And I have already said, Chairman, that we will not set a quota. In other words, you're not going to try to employ more PWDs. We'll try to facilitate PWDs sitting civil service recruitment exams, and we'll see which departments and bureaus are in a better position to hire more PWDs. And after some time, we can, of course, conduct reviews. But will you give us figures or a breakdown by departments and by ranks or by grades? Now, Chairman, I hope the members will understand that, in fact, some PWDs may not need assistance when they apply for certain jobs. I want to follow up on a question raised by Ms. Emily Lau, CSB 012. I want to follow up on parts B and C concerning the national studies classes. I want to know more about these classes or programs, because you are telling us that the expenditure is only about $330,000 per year, and you're talking about 25 places only. So I want to know whether you've included in this paragraph national studies courses for civil servants. Yes, Chairman, with regard to the 330,000 and 250,000 mentioned in para B and para C. Now these are expenditures incurred under the exchange program. So we're not talking about national studies courses here. Now these are exchange programs with 4 cities or provinces in the mainland. And we're talking about exchanges between civil servants and their mainland counterparts. Then what about the expenditure for national studies classes or programs? Yes, I think we can give members the information after the meeting. All right, Mr. Sin, that's all. Next, Mr. Tong Chair. Yes, thank you, Chairman. I wish to follow up on CSB 018 and 019. I would like to first of all talk about CSB 019 concerning exchange between Hong Kong civil servants and their mainland counterparts. Now, we have 5 government departments taking part in the staff exchange program. I want to know the criteria you use in selecting these 5 departments, and also which civil servants are selected for the exchange program. What are the criteria for your selecting civil servants to take part in the staff exchange program? Yes, thank you. 2 points, Chairman. We look at areas of work in which mainland officers are interested. And we have to consider whether we can really provide suitable positions for mainland government servants. In fact, usually the exchange is at the more practical level, at the working level, at the technical level. And the mainland is of the view that such exchanges would be more useful. As to who can take part in the staff exchange program, now departments concerned can recommend suitable staff members, and they are mainly middle management staff or those working in the front line. Yes, Mr. Wong can supplement. Yes, Chairman, may I refer to para 1? Now, they are mainly those at point MPS 45 or above. And for mainland participants, they are mainly at division director or deputy division director level. And then let me follow up on CSB 018, Chairman. I want to know whether there are induction courses for new recruits so that they can understand better the operation of the government. And as a result, they will be able to discharge their duties more efficiently. Chairman, we do have induction courses for civil servants. Some of these courses are administered by CSTDI, and then different departments also provide induction courses for their staff. Mr. Tam Chung, I want to know about the number of retired or retiring civil servants. May I refer to para B of the Secretary's opening speech? He said that pension expenditure would increase because number of retirees would increase. In fact, in 2012, you said that the number of retiring civil servants would be 5,660, but then the actual number was 5,194, including judicial officers. And you are telling us that in 2013, you expect to have a larger number of retired public officers. So I would like to know why you've overestimated the number of retired public officers in previous years, and you are telling us that in the coming year you also expect the number of retired public officers to increase. Can you explain why? I'll ask Ms. Chan to give a reply. I think the director can give a reply. Yes, Chairman. Now, we rely on two sources of information in our estimate. First of all, departments to give us figures concerning the number of officers in their respective departments reaching retirement age. But then, of course, the actual number may not be the same because many colleagues do have their leave balances, and as a result, they may defer their retirement dates because they aren't able to take all their leave. And then some colleagues may apply for early retirement. And so it's impossible to come up with a 100% accurate estimate considering the number of retiring public officers.
So for the estimates this year, you also overestimate the number. Is it right? And you cannot have an accurate number. Is there a trend that there will be a rise of retirees? Have you reached a peak season or peak year for people to retire? I'm sure we see a rise in retirees because you age every year. So we'll see a rise in that regard. Mr. Lan Kuo-hong. Chairman, Mr. Wong Kwok-hing said people are trying to outwit each other. This is really ridiculous. Civil servants are not in the bureau official ranks, so how can they outwit the bureau heads, the secretaries, as well as the political assistants? You should not slam the civil servants in that way. Mr. Wong, in fact, is a big fan of CY Leung, but it seems he sounds really sour now because he's being cheated that he would be a king. I don't understand why CY fans are now slamming, criticizing civil servants. If the chief executive asked the civil servants to perform their duty, can they say no? So, Secretary, have you been so instructed? Have the civil servants been so instructed? My answer is the civil service would try to assist the CE. All right then. I'll tell you what I'll call that. You really have to let go of this point. He said he talked about the Hong Kong speed. Now, members are asking the administration to cover Chinese medical services too, but they are saying no to your proposals, and you do not know how to talk to the CE. How come, because of that, you are criticizing the civil servants? If you cannot do what you want, then you should criticize the CE instead of the civil servants. I really don't want to say that, but if you were so cheated by somebody, you should go after that somebody. I think the using intermediaries to employ people is really very evil. Has CY Leung asked the administration to look into this matter of contractors shirking responsibility? This is my first question. Second, do you have any timetables for NCSE staff to convert NCSE staff to civil servants? Mr. Leung, time's up for you. You may like to submit your questions in the form. Mr. Pun Siu-ping. I'd like to ask CSB 0116, which is about the promotion of occupational safety and health in civil service. You mentioned in the reply that in 2013-14, you're going to organize some exhibitions in this regard. Can you tell us more about the contents of the exhibition and when you're going to hold the exhibition? Secretary. Ms. Lam, I'll defer to Ms. Lam. Ms. Lam, please. For this exhibition, we're still in the planning stage. The details can be submitted to Mr. Poon in written reply. That means you do not have the exact or concrete time for that. Right. Any further questions? Next, Mr. Martin Liu. Thank you, Chairman. Question is about CSB 015. I'd like to follow up on that. It's about human resources, human resource management. Provision for 2013-14 see a rise of $14.5 million compared to the revised estimate of the previous year. And this is mainly due to the net increase of 7 posts. From the reply of the administration, the extra posts will incur about $2.193 million of expenditure. For this sum, you say it is it makes up the main part of the $14.5 million. But what about the rest of the $14.5 million? Where does it go? Secretary. Now, Mr. Lau just focused on the 7 posts in question. That's why our reply focused on the 7 posts. And in fact, the costs incurred from the 7 posts amount to only 0.9% of the 2013-14 estimate for the program. There are other expenses for the year, for example, in terms of training and upgrading computer system. Mr. Lau, any follow-up? I have a longer question. I don't think I have enough time. I'll submit a written question. Next, Ms. Chen Yunhan stepped outside. Mr. Kwok Wai Keung. Thank you, Chairman. My question is about the post office, Hong Kong Post. For the 3 Hong Kong Post unions, they have asked to see the secretary to tell you about the shortage of manpower, the serious shortage of manpower. And from your estimates, it seems that you don't have any plans to increase the manpower, which means the manpower will stand at 5,347. Do you have any measures to resolve this problem? The post office workers have already overworked for a very long time. Do you have any plans to resolve that? When will you review the operation of the operation fund? Next question is about CSB 035. Sorry, the fund you mentioned is in fact not related to the estimates. Yes, all right, but I would like to ask about the manpower. All right, you're still using your time. I'm just pointing out the problem to you. Now, my question is about the making appointment with the dental clinics. The demand is greater than the supply of services. In that regard, do you have any number of civil servants who are not able to enjoy the services? You will increase the number of get dentists by 17, and how much more services can they provide? The second part of the question, I'll defer to Dr. Lam. Now, the first question is about the trading fund that is not under the CSB, so may I urge you to go to the relevant bureau for a reply. As for working overtime and manpower, in fact, we talked about this with the head of Hong Kong Post. I understand that the head is maintaining liaison and communication with the workers, the employees. Now, the second part of the question, the second question, he said he would defer to his colleague to answer that. Doctor, please. About the dental services question, let me take that. In fact, in our reply, it says that there is a large demand, so people have to wait for a long time. Sometimes people have to wait for 5 months. That is, the waiting time ranges from 5 to 48 months for braces and other special treatment like orthodontics. That the waiting time will take even longer time, but the waiting time or the priority will depend on the urgency of the case. But we do not have figures about people being transferred to other clinics because of the special case. Now, your reply is getting too long, so I'll defer to Mr. Mr. Albert Ho has stepped outside, and then Mr. Stephen Ho, Mr. Leung Chi Cheng. CSB 005 is about paternity leave. From the reply, 2012 civil servants have been on paternity leave. Now, for these civil servants, after they've taken the paternity leave, have they applied for any annual leave? I don't think you have the data with you. Is it right, Secretary? I don't quite understand the question. Now, if a baby is born to the spouse of the civil servant and he has applied for the paternity leave, he can apply for the leave. We haven't turned down any such leave application. But the applicant is also entitled to annual leave. Now, annual leave is something different from paternity leave. But they are also related to your expenditure, right? Now, in that case, say, for example, someone has taken 5 paternity leave days. Do you think 5 days are sufficient for these people? Our assessment evaluation is that it's sufficient at present. Have you talked to the employees to see whether it is really sufficient for them? Have you held such meeting? The paternity leave has been rolled out for a short period only. When we designed the paternity leave package, we discussed it with relevant civil servants organizations. It's hard to say whether it's sufficient or not. We have to balance the use of public money and their needs. We were of the view that 5 days were enough, but we've only rolled out the scheme for a short time. At present, we think it's sufficient. Any review, any plans to review? As said, the scheme has been rolled out for a short time only. We do not have any plans for review as yet. Next, Mrs. Regina Ip. Thank you, Chairman. My question is about CSB 007. Question 1506 is in fact my question, which is about NCSC staff and employees in Hong Kong Post. Compared to 2012-13 estimates, the establishment of Hong Kong Post amount to 5,347, but as at June last year, NCSC staff of Hong Kong Post amount to 1,233. They have worked for more than 5 years, and over 600 of them worked for 10 years or more. Is it the case that you do not have any plans to make these NCSC staff into civil servants?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think our objective is to identify long-term work suitable for civil servants, and then we will try to secure the necessary resources and turn the post into civil service posts. So we have to do it gradually. And then concerning the trading fund, in its management, you have to consider its operation. So we have to allow more flexibility for trading fund operations, because salary-related expenditure does affect the operation and the competitiveness of the trading fund. So is the Secretary saying that as the Hong Kong Post is a trading fund, some of its employees will inevitably have to be NCSC staff? Is it that this is essential in order to achieve savings in cost? Now we'll continue to discuss the matter with the Hong Kong Post. I understand that they do intend to convert some of the posts into civil service posts, but then the Hong Kong Post is a trading fund operation, so they may not be possible to convert all their posts into civil service posts. They need to consider the operation of the trading fund. Mrs. Ip, I think I can follow up on another occasion. Mr. Michael Tien. Yes, Chairman. I want to ask a question about CSB 017, training for civil servants, training in Chinese and English, so as to enhance their language capability to communicate effectively in Chinese and English. Now I understand that previously a C at the A level was required, and that would mean top 15%. But now we have the DSE. And as there is no screening at the HKCE level, that would be equivalent to about the top 5%. But then if you look at 5-star and 5-star star, that would be 3.1%. But if you also take into account grade 5, that would be 7.7%. And I think you need to consider really increasing the English language requirement, though it may be more difficult for you to hire people. So AOs and EOs, and for the English subject, can you only consider the grades 5-star and 5-star star, so as to enhance the level of English in society in general? Permanent Secretary, thank you. Chairman, in fact, for different grades, different ranks, different posts, we look at the job requirements, and it doesn't mean that those who satisfy the minimum requirements will definitely be employed. In fact, many of our posts are oversubscribed. And I understand that candidates for AO and EO vacancies have to sit for civil service exams. And then, depending on the results, we'll select certain candidates for interviews. I understand, but I am only talking about language proficiency. Now, we have been talking about enhancing Hong Kong people's language proficiency, but I think little has been done, and I think the Hong Kong government should do something. You must offer the incentive. We shouldn't keep talking about how to increase Hong Kong people's language proficiency. Secretary. Now, in fact, the requirements laid down are merely minimum requirements. So can you consider increasing the minimum requirements? But language proficiency is not the only prerequisite. But can you consider, in fact, imposing a more stringent requirement with regard to language proficiency? Mr. Fernando Chia, I want to follow up on CSB 001, employment of PWDs in the government, and I would like to have more information with regard to NCSC staff. How many of these employees are PWDs? I don't have the information here in the reply, and I want this figure from the administration. And then second, for many years, the percentage of PWDs hired by the civil service has remained at 2%. But in fact, over the years, PWDs in Hong Kong have received more education. So can the Secretary consider increasing the percentage from 2 to a higher percentage point? And then thirdly, now if can the Labour and Welfare Bureau extend the policy to NGOs and contractors? And can the Civil Service Bureau then share its experience with these prospective employers, for example, the difficulties faced, and also can you try to encourage more such employers to share their experience with the Labor and Welfare Bureau and the prospective employers? Chairman, with regard to experience sharing, we are always prepared to do so, no problem. Then second, we are reviewing our work in this regard to see whether we can do more, but we're not inclined to set a quota or a target. In fact, there are some candidates for civil service posts who are PWDs, but who haven't indicated to us that they are PWDs. Maybe their disabilities do not affect their performance in those posts at all. And so according to our records, these are not PWD employees. But of course, we'll continue to encourage government bureaus and departments to employ more PWDs. Setting a target percentage or a quota may not be the best approach. I think what is important is that we treat them fairly and we give them equal opportunities so that they can, like able-bodied candidates, sit for civil service exams. I understand that at the moment, Chairman, it's a voluntary declaration system, and candidates do not need to declare that they are PWDs. But then, is there a civil service policy whereby when all things being equal, priority will be given to a PWD in respect of employment? And I think time's up, and if you want further information, you can fill in the form before you. Ms. Chen Yun Han. Now, in fact, I asked this question quite some time ago. During Mr. Lee's Yu's days, we were told that if the post or the NCSC post continue for 5 years, then consideration would be given to turning the post into a civil service post. I was in this council from 2004 to 2008, and I can remember that that was the remark made. So I want to know whether this is still your policy. And then there are some who have been working as NCSC staff for a very long period of time, and I think you do understand that they suffer from low morale. So can you try to carry out a review concerning this group of employees? Thank you. Now, for long-term tasks suitable for civil servants to perform, we'll consider turning those posts into civil service posts. But then there may be some seasonal or time-limited jobs, and so they should be filled by NCSC staff, and also in the trading farm cases, and also in cases where we don't have the talents within the civil service, then we'll still need to rely on NCSC staff. For example, the Customs and Excise Department has recently employed some NCSC staff to enforce the government's policy with regard to formula products. So in cases like this one, NCSC staff will be hired. But then, of course, if these tasks are to be performed by civil servants for the long term, then those posts should become civil service posts. So, thank you, Secretary. You are saying that there may be time-limited jobs, there may be seasonal jobs, but then you said that for long-term tasks, you would consider converting the posts into civil service posts. And I'm talking about these posts. I want to tell you that I have recently come across a case in the SWD, and secretary you used to work in the SWD, and in fact that's in fact a self-reliance program, and in fact those staff members were commended by Mrs. Carrie Lam. And then they have been working as NCSC staff for over a decade. So I want to know why this is the case. Please be concise, Secretary. Yes, Chairman. It's for the Bureau or the Department to decide whether the work should be contracted out. And if the contracting arrangement comes to an end, we'll notify the staff members in advance so that they can make the necessary preparations. So we'll have the next session on the 12th of April, 5:40. We'll now have a break of about 13 minutes, and we'll resume at 4:30 p.m.